at times blind. I did want to read some. I wanted to mention a few of my mentors. They can be here today. My grandfather Al died of alcoholism at about 50. My Uncle Gary died of alcoholism at about 45. My cousin Carl killed himself at about 20. My brother Dennis died from drugs at 30. That was about 20 years ago. I'm still mad at him. My Uncle Art died of AIDS. My Uncle Danny died of lead poisoning. It was at 45. That was the first suicide. That was the second suicide. My Uncle Noel's suicide. My cousin Noel died of AIDS. My Grandpa Delbert committed suicide. It was all alcoholism. I don't blame this for anything I've been through. I don't blame it for my alcoholism, but I realized a couple years ago that 10-year-old Kirk and 13-year-old Kirk didn't have a chance. And, I was born angry. I don't remember my parents being married. And I miss my dad. My dad was my first crush. I'm 6'5", 235, and that's how I know how to negotiate a feeling. And, when the step family came, I was the youngest. And I'm 6'5". I wasn't 6'5", 235 then, but once I got big, I paid it back. Gina discussed it really well. The difference between alcoholism to me, this is my opinion, and drug addiction. I've done it all. If you take someone can have surgery and get addicted to pills, and you get rid of those pills and they're fine. I've got a soul sickness. I've got a God hole, is what I've heard it called. Gina touched on it, only God can fill it up. And I ran and ran and ran and tried to drown it for as long as I could. Cost me my education. Most people thought I'd be at least a PE coach or something. It cost me sports. It cost me a marriage. My children were taken away from social services. That was my wife's fault. That was my ex-wife's fault. It happened at her house. The ambulance came. She's an alcoholic too. And I got to blame her. In reality, I was passed out on the floor when I was notified that I have no rights to my children. I cannot talk to them. It took me about a half hour to scrape enough change to make a pay phone call to my mother to find out what's going on. Because I spent the last time I had on alcohol the night before. I've got car wrecks. I've been in jail. I can't tell you how many times. I've got over 20 years in Alcoholics Anonymous of not being able to stay sober. And, I think it was September 15, 2008, I saw the light. It was blue, then it was yellow, and then I think it was red. And that guy pulled me over. And I was arrested one more time. I had drugs in the car. There were a few felonies going on there. I had an open bottle of Jack Daniels and an open beer. And I'd actually been drinking for years. So that's that part of the story. I guess I'll say one more thing about that is when my children were taken from me, I went into a court-ordered program, and I set records for getting the rights to my children back. I got sober, and I started out standing before a judge threatening everybody in that courtroom with revenge. I told them, I'm going to make you feel exactly like I felt. And at the end of this program, the judge had retired, and he did legal paperwork so that he could oversee my graduation from this program. And I was drunk about a week later, and I had no solution. And I black out every night. I was in a blackout for about 2 years, and then I sobered up. About 3 weeks after that story I told about the light. Angry, this was not going to work, here I go again. The one thing I had for me, the last thing I had going for me, was I hated who I was, what I was, and everything I did. It was no longer my wife's fault, it was no longer your fault, it was no longer God's fault. I do not know much at this time about God, and what I remember is I was probably on my way to court, and I just told God, they were talking about putting me in prison, and I told God, I didn't pray to get out of it, I didn't pray for leniency, I said, whatever your will is for me, and I know it's going to hurt, keep me sober. When I get out, keep me sober. And I was probably yelling to him at the top of my lungs. Take care of my kids and keep them away from this disease. In the beginning, we call it higher power. A power greater than himself that can restore me to sanity, that can keep me sober. That's all I do. And I use the people. I use the room of my program I'm in. I can stay sober then. These people let me know you need God bad. You need God bad. And in the 4.5 years since, I've been able to, you'd have to talk to my kids about this, but I've been able to gain the respect of my children back, and pretty much through food. They started knowing that they were going to eat today. They knew when they were going to eat. Hey, I've got to go drug test. I won't be here after work. Enchiladas are in the fridge. My son's bigger than me, so he appreciates that. I live in the same house I lived in. I now have a car. I now have a driver's license. My identification is legal and it has my real name on it. There are no police chasing me. There is nobody I hate, most importantly myself. I am just so grateful that I've lived long enough. I guess tell this story. And you guys are giving my mom a heart attack because when she finds out that I spoke at the church, she's going to go, oh my goodness. Her life is complete. I don't do this normally. I'm usually sitting in a chair and we're all talking, and I want to tell you something about this church, and I want to tell you something about your church. You guys know we barbecue. Mikey couldn't be here. I will tell you a story about him. Mike got drunk and found out he had enlisted in the Army. 4 to 7 years. That's about the only story I could tell you about me and Mike in this room. When I started barbecuing here, when we started doing that, it was hard for me to be around people. I'm not one that walks into a church. It was almost impossible for me to walk into a room of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I saw you people and your love and how you look out for people. I saw how, come on and eat. We don't care what your belief is or what you're doing. Just come on and eat on Wednesday night. And I remember seeing a homeless person. And he was obviously homeless. And he was a little bit embarrassed when we served him food. And he was kind of standing outside eating. I know the feeling. Thanks for, not throwing me out of here. And I saw you people say, come sit down with us. And I really appreciate that. And the last time I spoke in this room, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this one out, was my father's funeral. And you guys hardly knew me. Maybe one barbecue. I didn't know what to do. I don't know how to plan a funeral. I don't know how to have your dad die. I don't know how to not drink. And I think I was about 2 years sober. And Mikey got involved. A week before the service, I had a key to this room. I had a key to the church. Settle down, show up. I had people coming from Habra, Northern California, San Diego. I didn't know if there was going to be 3 people or 103 people there. I was able to get through it without a drink, thanks to God's grace and Alcoholics Anonymous. But this church made my life really easy for a few months because of what you guys did. And this is from a hope to die drunk. So I want to thank you people for having us. I want to thank you people for opening up your hearts to us. And, that's it. Thanks for letting me share.